Rude customer yells at waitress. Messi's generosity silences everyone. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The elegant dining room of Le Rêve buzzed with activity as smartly dressed servers wove between tables, balancing trays of artfully plated cuisine. Amidst the bustle, Sofia Morales, a young waitress with an air of determined optimism, navigated the sea of diners with practiced ease. Her warm smile and attentive service set her apart, even in this upscale establishment known for its impeccable standards. As she approached a table occupied by a well-known regular, Mr. Langley, Sofia's heart raced with anticipation. The wealthy businessman was notorious for his short temper and condescending attitude towards the staff. Steeling herself, Sofia greeted him with a polite nod, ready to face whatever challenges the evening might bring. Little did she know that an unexpected presence in the restaurant would soon change the course of her life and the lives of those around her in ways she never could have imagined. Seated at a nearby table, unnoticed by the other patrons, was none other than Lionel Messi, the world-renowned soccer player known not only for his incredible talent on the field but also for his humility and kindness off it. As the night unfolded, the paths of these three individuals, the hard-working waitress, the entitled businessman, and the compassionate athlete, would intersect in a powerful display of the transformative power of empathy and respect. Lionel Messi sat quietly, his eyes taking in the elegant surroundings of Le Rêve. He had chosen this restaurant for its reputation of excellence, hoping to enjoy a moment of peace and anonymity amidst his hectic schedule. As he perused the menu, his attention was drawn to the nearby table where Mr. Langley sat, his brow furrowed in irritation. Messi watched as Sofia approached the table, her posture poised and her smile warm despite the palpable tension emanating from the businessman. He couldn't help but admire her composure in the face of such open hostility, recognizing the strength and grace it took to maintain professionalism in the face of adversity. As the evening progressed, Messi found himself increasingly drawn into the dynamics unfolding before him. He saw the way Langley's harsh words and dismissive attitude chipped away at Sofia's confidence, the way her shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly with each passing interaction. And yet, she persevered, her commitment to her job and her customers unwavering. Messi knew all too well the toll that such mistreatment could take on a person's spirit. He had experienced his own share of challenges and setbacks, both on and off the field. But he had also learned the power of resilience, of rising above the negativity and staying true to one's values. As he watched Sofia navigate the difficult terrain of her workplace, he felt a growing sense of admiration and a desire to somehow make a difference in her world. Sofia could feel the weight of Mr. Langley's gaze as she approached his table once more, her heart hammering in her chest. She had already endured a barrage of complaints and insults from the demanding patron, but she refused to let his behavior diminish her spirit. With a deep breath, she summoned her most cheerful smile and greeted him once again. "Good evening, Mr. Langley. I wanted to check in and see if there's anything else I can do to improve your dining experience this evening." Langley's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a sneer. "You can start by getting my order right the first time," he snapped, his voice dripping with disdain. "I don't pay top dollar to be served subpar food by incompetent staff." Sofia felt the sting of his words, but she refused to let them break her. She apologized gracefully, assuring Langley that she would personally see to it that his concerns were addressed. As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of Messi at the nearby table, his eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and quiet admiration. The brief moment of connection bolstered Sofia's resolve. She knew that she was not alone in her struggles, that there were good people in the world who recognized the value of kindness and respect. With renewed determination, she set about her tasks, her head held high and her heart filled with the knowledge that she was making a difference, one small act of grace at a time. As the evening wore on, the tension in the restaurant seemed to reach a boiling point. Mr. Langley's complaints grew louder and more aggressive, his words cutting through the air like knives. Sofia, her nerves frayed and her patience wearing thin, struggled to maintain her composure in the face of his relentless attacks. And then, in a moment of shocking cruelty, Langley crossed a line that left the entire restaurant stunned. Rising from his seat, he grabbed Sophia by the arm, his fingers digging into her skin as he berated her mercilessly. His voice, laced with venom, echoed through the dining room, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Sophia, her eyes brimming with tears, stood frozen in place, too shocked and humiliated to respond. The other diners averted their gazes, too uncomfortable or afraid to intervene. The staff, their faces etched with a mix of anger and helplessness, remained rooted in place, unsure of how to proceed. But amidst the chaos and the fear, one man refused to stand idly by. Lionel Messi, his heart filled with righteous indignation, rose from his seat and strode purposefully towards Langley's table. His presence commanded attention, his eyes blazing with a fierce determination to set things right. In that moment, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Would Messi's intervention only serve to escalate the situation, or would his quiet strength and unwavering moral compass be enough to turn the tide? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the events of this night would leave an indelible mark on all who witnessed them. As Lionel Messi approached Mr. Langley's table, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted palpably. The once bustling dining room fell silent, every eye trained on the unfolding confrontation. Langley, his hand still gripping Sophia's arm, looked up at Messi with a mix of surprise and disdain. "Excuse me, sir," Messi began, his voice calm but firm. "I couldn't help but notice the way you've been treating this young woman. I must ask you to release her and to treat her, and all the staff here, with the respect they deserve." Langley's eyes narrowed, his face reddening with anger. "And who are you to tell me how to behave?" he sneered, his grip on Sophia's arm tightening. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Messi met Langley's gaze unflinchingly, his own eyes filled with a quiet strength. "It doesn't matter who you are," he replied evenly. "What matters is how you treat others. No one deserves to be spoken to or touched in the way you have done tonight." A murmur rippled through the crowd, the other diners nodding in agreement. Sophia, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and gratitude, looked to Messi as if he were a beacon of hope in a sea of darkness. Langley, his bravado faltering under the weight of Messi's words and the collective disapproval of the room, finally released his grip on Sophia's arm. She stumbled back, rubbing her wrist as she fought back tears. Messi, his gaze never leaving Langley's, continued, "I think it's time for you to leave, sir. You've caused enough harm for one evening." For a long moment, Langley remained motionless, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. But as the seconds ticked by and the weight of the room's judgment bore down upon him, he finally relented. With a final, venomous glare at Messi and Sophia, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. In the aftermath of Langley's departure, the restaurant seemed to collectively exhale. The diners, their appetites suddenly restored, resumed their conversations, their voices tinged with a newfound respect for the unassuming hero in their midst. The staff, their spirits buoyed by Messi's intervention, returned to their duties with renewed purpose, their steps a little lighter and their smiles a little brighter. But for Sophia, the impact of the evening's events ran far deeper. As she stood there, her heart racing and her mind reeling, she found herself overcome with a profound sense of gratitude and awe. She had never before experienced such a powerful display of kindness and solidarity, and the realization that someone as renowned as Lionel Messi had stood up for her left her feeling both humbled and empowered. Messi, for his part, remained characteristically modest in the face of the room's admiration. He simply nodded to Sophia, his eyes conveying a silent message of support and encouragement, before returning to his table to finish his meal. But the effects of his actions rippled out far beyond the walls of Waitress. In the days and weeks that followed, word of the incident spread like wildfire, sparking a larger conversation about the treatment of service workers and the power of individual acts of courage and compassion. Sophia, emboldened by Messi's example, found herself taking on a new role within the restaurant, that of an advocate and a leader. She began to speak out more forcefully about the challenges faced by her colleagues, urging management to implement policies that would protect and empower them. And slowly but surely, change began to take root. Other restaurants in the area, inspired by the story of Lou Rev, began to re-examine their own practices, placing a greater emphasis on worker well-being and customer respect. The industry as a whole seemed to be undergoing a quiet revolution, one small act of kindness at a time. As the weeks turned into months, Sophia found herself at the center of a growing movement. She had never sought out the spotlight, but her experiences at Lou Rev had ignited a passion within her, a desire to make a difference in the lives of her fellow service workers. She began to organize meetings and events, bringing together servers, cooks, and other restaurant staff from across the city to share their stories and strategize for change. They talked about the challenges they faced on a daily basis, the long hours, the low wages, the lack of benefits and job security. But they also talked about the joys of their work, the satisfaction of a job well done, the bonds of camaraderie that formed in the heat of a busy shift, the knowledge that they were an essential part of the fabric of their community. As their numbers grew, so too did their influence. They began to lobby local government officials, demanding better protections and support for service workers. They staged peaceful demonstrations outside of restaurants that were known for mistreating their staff, calling attention to the injustices that had long gone unnoticed and unchallenged. And through it all, Sophia remained a constant presence, her voice strong and her vision clear. She knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, that there would be setbacks and obstacles along the way. But she also knew that she was not alone, that she had an entire community standing beside her, united in their determination to create a better future for themselves and for those who would come after them. Lionel Messi, watching from afar as the movement gained traction, couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and admiration for the young woman he had met that fateful night at Lou Rev. He knew that she had always possessed the strength and the courage to stand up for what was right. He had simply helped her to see it in herself. And as he watched her lead marches and give speeches, her face alight with passion and purpose, he knew that he had been right to intervene on that fateful night. For in doing so, he had not only helped to change the course of one woman's life, he had helped to ignite a spark that would go on to illuminate the lives of countless others. As the service workers movement gained momentum, it began to attract the attention of the wider public. Media outlets from around the country descended on the city, eager to report on this grassroots campaign for change. Sophia found herself thrust into the spotlight, her face splashed across the front pages of newspapers and her words echoing through the halls of power. She was invited to speak at conferences and panel discussions, to share her story and her vision with audiences that ranged from local community groups to national advocacy organizations. At first, the attention was overwhelming. Sophia had never sought fame or recognition, and the sudden glare of the media spotlight left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. But as she began to hear from other service workers from around the country, people who had faced the same struggles and challenges that she had, she realized that her story was not unique, that her experiences were part of a larger tapestry of injustice and inequality. And so, she embraced her new role as a spokesperson and an advocate, using her platform to amplify the voices of those who had long been silenced and marginalized. She spoke out against the systemic issues that had allowed the mistreatment of service workers to go unchecked for so long, the lack of labor protections, the inadequate wages, the culture of disrespect and abuse. She also highlighted the incredible resilience and strength of her fellow workers, the way they continued to show up day after day, to pour their hearts and souls into their work, despite the challenges they faced. She reminded the public of the essential role that service workers played in their communities, the way they kept the engines of the economy running, even as they were often overlooked and undervalued. And slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Policymakers, spurred on by the growing public outcry, began to take notice. They introduced new legislation aimed at protecting the rights of service workers and ensuring that they were treated with the dignity and respect they deserved. Employers, too, began to take heed. Many restaurants and other service-based businesses, recognizing the power of the movement and the importance of their workers, began to implement changes of their own, raising wages, improving working conditions, and creating a culture of support and appreciation. Through it all, Sophia remained at the forefront, her voice a clarion call for change. And though the road ahead was long and the challenges many, she knew that she was not alone, that she had an entire community and one remarkable ally standing beside her, ready to fight for a better future for all. As the service workers movement continued to gain traction, Sophia found herself grappling with a new set of challenges. The sudden influx of attention and support had brought with it a new level of scrutiny and pressure, and she often found herself second-guessing her own decisions and doubting her ability to lead. It was during one of these moments of self-doubt that she received an unexpected visitor at Le Rêve. Lionel Messi, the man who had first inspired her to take a stand, had returned to the restaurant, this time not as a customer, but as a friend. As they sat together in a quiet corner of the dining room, Messi listened intently as Sophia poured out her fears and frustrations. She told him of the long hours and the endless demands, of the criticism and the backlash that she sometimes faced from those who opposed the movement. Messi, his eyes filled with empathy and understanding, simply nodded. He knew all too well the toll that leadership could take, the way it could leave one feeling isolated and alone. But he also knew the incredible power of perseverance and the importance of staying true to one's convictions. "Sophia," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "what you are doing is not easy, but it is important. You are giving voice to those who have long been silenced, and you are fighting for a cause that is bigger than any one person." He reached out and took her hand, his touch a reminder of the connection and the solidarity that had first brought them together. "You are not alone in this fight," he continued. "You have an entire community standing beside you, and you have the strength and the courage to see this through." Sophia, her eyes brimming with tears, nodded. She knew that Messi was right, that she could not let her doubts and fears hold her back. She had come too far and fought too hard to give up now. With renewed determination, she returned to her work, her resolve stronger than ever. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that she was not walking it alone. She had the support of her fellow workers, the backing of a growing movement, and the guidance of a true friend and ally. And so, she pressed on, her head held high and her heart full of hope, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that together, they could change the world, one small act of courage at a time. Months turned into years, and the service workers movement continued to grow and evolve. What had started as a small, grassroots campaign had now become a national force for change, with chapters and affiliates in cities across the country. Sophia, now a seasoned leader and advocate, found herself traveling frequently, speaking at conferences and meetings, and working to build coalitions and partnerships with other organizations fighting for workers' rights. But even as she worked tirelessly to advance the cause, she never forgot her roots, or the community that had first inspired her to take a stand. She made a point of returning to Le Rêve whenever she could, of spending time with her former colleagues and hearing their stories and their struggles. It was during one of these visits that she received some surprising news. The owner of Le Rêve, a man who had long been known for his tough business practices and his resistance to change, had announced that he was stepping down, and that he wanted Sophia to take over as the new manager of the restaurant. At first, Sophia was hesitant. She knew that running a restaurant was no easy task, and she worried that taking on such a role would distract her from her work with the movement. But as she thought more about it, she realized that this was an opportunity to put her values into practice, to create a model for what a truly equitable and supportive workplace could look like. And so, with the backing of her fellow workers and the guidance of her mentor, Lionel Messi, she accepted the position and set about transforming Le Rêve into a beacon of hope and possibility for service workers everywhere. She implemented new policies and practices designed to ensure that every member of the staff was treated with dignity and respect. She raised wages and improved benefits and created opportunities for growth and advancement within the restaurant. She also made a point of using Le Rêve as a platform for advocacy and education, hosting events and workshops designed to raise awareness about the challenges faced by service workers and to build solidarity and support within the community. And as word of her success began to spread, other restaurants and businesses began to take notice and to follow her lead. Slowly but surely, the industry began to change, becoming more equitable, more supportive, and more sustainable for all those who worked within it. Through it all, Sophia remained humble and dedicated, always quick to credit the movement and the community that had made her work possible. She knew that there was still much to be done, that the fight for workers' rights was far from over. But she also knew that, together, they had the power to create a better future, one small act of courage at a time. Years passed, and the service workers' movement continued to grow and evolve. Sophia, now a respected leader and visionary, found herself at the center of a new chapter in the fight for workers' rights. The COVID-19 pandemic had brought with it a new set of challenges and struggles for service workers everywhere. With restaurants and businesses shuttered and millions out of work, the need for support and solidarity had never been greater. Sophia, ever the innovator, knew that they needed to adapt and evolve in order to meet this new moment. She began to work with other leaders within the movement to develop new strategies and initiatives designed to provide relief and support to those who had been hit hardest by the pandemic. They created mutual aid networks and relief funds designed to provide financial assistance and other forms of support to workers who had lost their jobs or seen their hours cut. They also worked to advocate for policy changes at the local, state, and national level, fighting for things like hazard pay, paid sick leave, and other protections for essential workers. Through it all, Sophia remained a steadfast presence, a voice of hope and resilience in the face of unimaginable challenges. She worked tirelessly to keep the movement focused and unified, even as the world around them seemed to be falling apart. And as the pandemic began to recede and the world began to slowly return to something resembling normalcy, Sophia knew that the fight was far from over. The pandemic had exposed the deep inequities and injustices that had long plagued the service industry, and she knew that it would take a sustained effort to address them. But she also knew that they had the power to create change, to build a better future for all those who had been left behind. And so, she pressed on, her resolve stronger than ever, ready to lead the movement into a new era of progress and possibility. As the world began to emerge from the shadow of the pandemic, Sophia found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought back to that fateful night at Le Rêve, when a simple act of courage and compassion had set her on a path that she never could have imagined. She thought of the countless workers she had met along the way, the stories of struggle and resilience that had inspired her to keep fighting, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. And she thought of Lionel Messi, the man who had first shown her the power of standing up for what was right, and who had remained a constant source of support and guidance throughout her journey. As she stood at the podium, addressing a crowd of thousands at a rally for workers' rights, Sophia felt a sense of hope and possibility that she had never known before. She looked out at the sea of faces before her, at the workers and activists and allies who had come together to demand change, and she knew that they were not alone. "My friends," she began, her voice strong and clear, "we stand here today at a moment of great possibility and of great responsibility. The pandemic has shown us the deep inequities and injustices that have long plagued our society, and it has made clear the urgent need for change." She paused, letting her words sink in, before continuing. "But it has also shown us the incredible power of solidarity, of coming together to support and care for one another in times of crisis. And it is that power, that sense of community and connection, that will carry us forward as we work to build a better future for all." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and Sophia felt a surge of energy and determination washing over her. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be setbacks and challenges along the way. But she also knew that they had the strength and the courage to persevere, to keep fighting for the dignity and respect that all workers deserved. And as she stepped down from the podium, her heart full of gratitude and hope, she knew that she was not alone. She had a movement behind her, a community of workers and allies who would stand with her every step of the way. And together, they would change the world, one small act of courage at a time. In the years that followed, Sophia's legacy continued to grow and evolve. She became a symbol of hope and possibility for workers everywhere, a living embodiment of the power of collective action and solidarity. Under her leadership, Le Rêve had become a model for what a truly equitable and sustainable workplace could look like. The restaurant had become a hub of activism and advocacy, a place where workers from across the industry could come together to share their stories, to strategize and organize, and to build power together. And as the movement continued to grow and spread, Sophia found herself taking on new roles and responsibilities. She became a mentor and a guide to a new generation of leaders, sharing her wisdom and experience with those who would carry the fight forward. She also became a powerful voice for change at the national level, working with policymakers and advocates to push for systemic reforms that would transform the lives of workers everywhere. She fought for things like a living wage, universal health care, and a more just and equitable economy, always guided by the principles of dignity, respect, and solidarity that had first inspired her to take a stand. Through it all, she remained deeply connected to her roots, to the community that had first nurtured and supported her. She made a point of returning to Le Rêve often, of spending time with the workers and the regulars who had become like family to her over the years. And whenever she found herself feeling overwhelmed or discouraged, she would think back to that fateful night, to the moment when a simple act of courage and compassion had changed everything. She would remember the look on Lionel Messi's face, the way he had stood up for her without hesitation or fear, and she would feel a renewed sense of purpose and determination. For Sophia knew that change was possible, that a better world was within reach. And she knew that, together, they had the power to make it a reality, one small act of courage at a time. Years turned into decades, and Sophia's legacy only continued to grow. She had become a global icon, a symbol of hope and possibility for workers and activists everywhere. The movement she had helped to build had transformed the lives of millions, securing historic victories for workers' rights and creating a more just and equitable world for all. And through it all, Sophia had remained a constant presence, a tireless advocate and a visionary leader. But even as she reached the pinnacle of her influence and impact, Sophia never lost sight of what truly mattered. She remained deeply connected to her community, to the people and the places that had first inspired her to take a stand. And so, on a warm summer evening, she found herself back at Le Rêve, surrounded by the workers and the regulars who had become like family to her over the years. They had gathered to celebrate her retirement, to honor the incredible legacy she had built and the countless lives she had touched. As Sophia looked out at the sea of faces before her, she felt a sense of overwhelming gratitude and love. She thought back to all the moments that had brought her to this point, to the challenges and the triumphs, the setbacks and the breakthroughs. She thought of the incredible resilience and courage of the workers she had met along the way they had never given up, even in the face of unimaginable odds. And she thought of Lionel Messi, the man who had first shown her the power of standing up for what was right, and who had remained a constant source of support and guidance throughout her journey. As she took the stage to speak, Sophia felt a sense of peace and purpose that she had never known before. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes shining with tears of joy and gratitude, and she began to speak. "My friends," she said, her voice strong and clear, "we stand here today not to celebrate my achievements, but to honor the incredible power of solidarity, of coming together to build a better world for all." She paused, letting her words sink in, before continuing. "The journey that brought us here was not an easy one, and the road ahead will not be easy either. But I have seen the incredible resilience and courage of workers everywhere, and I know that, together, we have the power to create a more just and equitable future for all." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and Sophia felt a surge of energy and hope washing over her. She knew that her work was not yet done, that there was still so much more to be accomplished. But she also knew that the seeds of change had been planted, that a new generation of leaders and activists would carry the fight forward. And as she stepped down from the stage, into the arms of the community that had loved and supported her for so long, she knew that the legacy she had built would endure, that the power of solidarity and compassion would continue to transform the world, one small act of courage at a time.